Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here in Riga today. And I'm afraid I don't speak Latvian, so you'll have to bear with me in English for the next half hour. So the scope today was to talk about the business case for environment performance. I will not talk about the health case today, but really from my perspective, and I have about almost 20 years experience working with sustainability environment in different companies, now with the Carlsberg Group, Aldaris here in Latvia. And to me it's very simple. And I hope we're a big group in this room, but for me it's what I would talk about with friends in the pub in the afternoon. You know, so I hope I keep it simple. From my perspective, if you think it's too simple, just ask me to add some layers. But I think this is actually, having worked in sustainability and environment, we have a tendency to be very technical and get it all right. And I think sometimes we miss our business colleagues at the same time. So we need to learn to speak the same language, and that's the point I'm trying to make over this half hour as well. So let's kickstart. I thought I'd make the case immediately on why environment performance is important for business. Especially if you're a business like Carlsberg, a brewery, we're making beer, and we're really dependent on resources. And we're dependent on climate for the grains, for the barley, for making the beer. We're dependent on water, we're dependent on energy, and all of those are business fundamentals. And it's always also some of the KPIs you usually drive for environment performance, right? So driving resources efficiently in an organization is driving environment performance in an efficient way. So there it is. So how can you really make sure that you identify how you can most efficiently make investment in a company so you save resources efficiently and reuse resources as efficiently as possible? That's how simple I think it is, but still it tends to become quite complicated in an organization where people have different roles and different KPIs that they are actually measured on. I think that's where the problem often lies. And for Carlsberg, there's another aspect, and that's the trust and reputational aspect. So you have the resources, the practical things that you work on day to day, but we are looking more and more also at the long term. We measure our reputation on a yearly basis in many countries in our global organization to put the temperature on what our stakeholders believe, how they believe that we perform. So really their perception about us over years. So I think that really gives you the shorter term in the things that you work on day to day, and how then you measure the trust, how that actually is perceived over time. And working with beer is, of course, working with products that contain alcohol. And alcohol, you also have a responsibility in terms of how people consume alcohol. And as a business and an industry, that have implications, for example, on regulations. So what are the duties and the regulations around alcohol? And we want them to be good because we want people to consume our products in a responsible manner. So we'd rather people have one beer and something else so they have an enjoyable evening. That's good consumers. And all of that is really important. That trust is important long term also for the growth and the sustainability of our business. And that also impacts on the environmental activities that we do. So both the short-term and the long-term perspectives are equally important. And coming back to this issue in companies that people don't talk to each other. And I think this guy really well illustrates how interesting it is that really smart people don't see some things that are obvious in the organization. We have very clearly in Carlsberg, everything that you do in terms of investment, you need to measure the return on investment, whether it's in production to increase volumes that you produce, but also for environment investments. And most environment investments that we want to do have a very quick return, because usually you save so much energy, you save so much water, you can reuse things in the production. So from a financial perspective, it's usually very good business cases. But my experience is that my colleagues in the environment field, where in companies that I worked before, have not really been trained of talking this kind of business language and actually doing those business cases properly so they can sell their ideas to the management. At Carlsberg, the sustainability team are really good at this. And I think that's part of the success in the company, that they speak the same language and they learn to really be efficient in selling their business cases for doing the right things. Good for business, good for environment. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But I think it's really the trick. So it's about getting the right people on board. And a while ago, I actually got a finance expert working with me in sustainability. And that was one of the best cases, because then you interlink it even better. So get people moving horizontally in the organization really helps to make this happen truly. And this is a different way of illustrating it. So of course, the rabbits only eat the green stuff. But the one to the left is really missing the treasure. So that's also a different way of looking at the different functions in the organization. So I really want to give you just a few examples of what we're doing and how we're working within Carlsberg. But first, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a sense of what the company is about. And of course, we're all about beer. Over 140 beer brands around the world, which is very interesting to work with. It also means that a lot of heritage and a lot of difference. And in fact, the different brands and the different companies, some of the oldest are more than 350 years old of heritage. So in terms of this first talk we had about startup and old businesses, you could in one hand say that this is a really old and tired business. It's so much heritage and so much tradition. But to me, there's absolutely no contradiction to having that heritage, but also having new thinking and a very strong innovative drive in the business. So that's Carlsberg. And you see Aldar is there. It's also very, very old part of Carlsberg Group. And in terms of our consumers, because we're a consumer goods company, and it's all about the consumer. And our consumers, when they buy our products, they want to do it guilt-free. They want to enjoy our products. So we're not in a position to put a lot of pressure on them of doing things. We do need to, in terms of, for example, as I mentioned before, responsible consumption. They have a role to play. But also in terms of waste, consumers have a role to play. But we need to engage them in a fun way, because essentially they expect us to take care of sustainability and be able to consume guilt-free. And in many countries, maybe the consumers continue to buy the products that they love. But what we do see in some countries, for example in Scandinavia, is that while the consumers continue to consume the brands that they love, the retailers are taking a bit of a quasi-legislative role. So if you don't drive environment and sustainability in a way that the retailers expect, you might get a worse deal in terms of getting your products on the shelves on the stores. So there's also a big argument from a pure commercial perspective. So this is Carlsberg Group. I say we're global. We're not truly global. We have market companies mainly in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and in Asia. And we're biggest up here in Northern Europe. Quite a big company, over 46,000 employees, and a lot of billions of bottles of beer every year. And I'm not showing this to promote Carlsberg. It's really to make a point, because if I push forward one more, this is also Carlsberg. And that means that we have over 100 of sites where we report sustainable environmental measures every year. that consume water, that consume product, that create waste. We have larger volumes of beer brewed, which means that that's a big volume of production that is going through our breweries. And we use quite a lot of water, electricity, and create quite a lot of waste every year. So from an environment perspective, we have a lot of things that we can really have a big influence on in reducing and saving costs and being able to invest for the business. So those are kind of our reason for being and things that we can really have a lever on from an environmental perspective. We've been working with CSR, or sustainability, for quite a long time, and have divided it in 3 different areas: resources and environment, health and well-being, and people and policies. So I will only give examples from resources and environment, since I want to keep it to a close scope today. And when we talk about and work with these different areas in CSR, this is a little bit theoretical, but I think it just helps because we try to see how not only do the right thing, but also package it in a way that makes it as impactful as possible, both internally and externally to our different stakeholders. So what we say in our approach to CSR is that we need to be able to articulate our commitment in a good way. So it's not only about setting a target, but really try to explain why some things are important and what we actually try to achieve, both from an environmental or nature perspective, but also from a business perspective. So what are the value that we want to create with the things that we want to do? The second one, which is really growing and that I think is one of the key things for the future of really efficiently driving sustainability in companies, are all about collaboration. So you will see in some of our examples that this is really one of the core areas for us. You give away some of your ownership of things, but you gain so much back by actually working together with different stakeholders. So collaboration is a key tool for us to really achieve our commitments. And the third one is all about activating our priorities to be concrete and choose what projects and what activities we need to drive to really achieve our commitment. So let me give you a few examples of how we're working. And this is the conceptual part of it. So I'm not going through the details. I really just wanted to show the circles. So we all know the value chain in a business. So you have the agriculture, you have the raw materials, you have the production, you have the packaging and logistics, and then you have the consumers and the end of life in the end. What we've done in our thinking about our value chain within Carlsberg is that we want to create as much circularity as possible. And that means that we look at our resources along the way of our value chain and see how can they actually be used as efficiently as possible. And how can we reuse them? It sounds very theoretical, but actually it's very pragmatic, and it's not necessarily that it works easily with everything. But here comes, for example, collaboration. So I'm just going to take one example. After the malting of the grains to make beer, you have the leftover, the grains that come out when you press out the liquid. That is not something that we can use for anything, so it's waste. But we deliver that waste to farmers because that is perfect feed for animals. It's a clean raw material, it's healthy, it's nutritious. So there you have a circularity in the use of the raw material for making beer. And that is something that is not obvious everywhere. So you can see in every country there's different processes. So, if we know that works, collaborate, find partners within the farmer community, and who would we be willing to not only take your waste, but actually buy it so you have an income from that waste. So I think that's a good example. So this is really the way we're thinking about it, and that creates new ideas that you would not have when you look at the value chain traditionally. The second one, which is just to illustrate how we actually do this in a day-to-day pragmatically in the business. So we have the circularity in the value chain, and we have the key things that we talked, those key KPIs that we need to drive to look at some of the key impacts that we have. And our annual report that we do every year for the company, not the CSR report, but the annual report, also show the KPIs that we drive from an environmental perspective that are part of the measurement of our executive committee for the group. So it's very much interlinked also to the remuneration of our executive committee, our CEO and the board members. Another innovation, just to illustrate how it's really linked together, is one of our main raw materials, barley. So like most companies that want to really grow and be successful in the future, we also have a very dedicated and professional R&D department. And one of the things they are working on are, of course, the raw materials. So for example, the barley. How can we make the barley even better? Both to make better beer, even better quality of all the different features of the product, but also in terms of the changing climate, the fact that we have areas of agriculture where we source our material that are more and more under pressure. So they realize that to sustain our business and be able to grow, we need to make sure that we have raw materials that could handle a climate that the experts say that we will have 30 years from now. So they've been doing a lot of research on this, and the Nolox is one barley strain that is now being commercialized and approved to be used and tested in many markets, that is much more climate tolerant, water tolerant, and being able to handle more harsh climate. But in addition, those strains are also done in a way that when you malt the beer, it actually uses less water in the production, and it also uses less energy in the production. So the innovation process are really helping us to drive the environment agenda. And I think in terms of the circularity of the value chain, it's important that you have the commitments and the drive from a sustainability perspective, so you can give that input to the research department up front, because otherwise they will not look for the right things that you need for the future. So that's a really good example that is being commercialized now in many markets in the world. But then, of course, we have we sell products that come in packaging, and when people have enjoyed the product, you have the packaging left. And that's actually a big problem for, I think, most consumer goods companies, is the fact that people will remember that waste in the end. And especially when you have your brand on it, it becomes branded waste, and that will impact that trust we talked about in the beginning. It's an issue for us from a reputational perspective, but of course it's also an environmental issue. Because it's also about economics. So for example, two-way packaging, so glass bottles that you reuse again and again, in many countries we struggle to get those bottles back, because there's not a system in the country. There's not the tradition by consumers to do their part to make it work, and it's a big cost. So we can see when we've done efforts and campaigns with partners in different countries to get bottles back, we can save millions of euros on a year-to-year basis. So money and environmental performance again. But there's another thing on the packaging that I wanted to talk to here. So we have this huge waste issue. And when we look at our carbon footprint across our value chain, we can actually see that the packaging is about 45% of our carbon footprint. So if you ignore the environmental, the economics a bit, from a pure environmental perspective, and we say, okay, the commitments need to focus on the most important areas, packaging is definitely one of those areas that we need to care about. So it's definitely an issue. But from a financial perspective, we also looked at the same thing, to look at the packaging and the issues around packaging. And it's very much about resources, the cost of resources, the aluminium market, for example, for cans, the cost of producing those materials. And from a strategic risk management perspective, internally, we just see that for the future, we have a big uncertainty of external costs of packaging that we need to take into account for the sustainability of our business longer term. So that has concerned our management and the environment department, and we just decided a few years ago what we could do to actually act upon this key issue for the company. And what we did was in 2014, so in the beginning of last year, at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, our CEO launched a partnership that we call the Carlsberg Circular Community. And it's really about, it sounds very nice, but it's really about eradicating waste. So packaging is seen, when you've consumed the product, packaging is seen as waste. And we want to remove the waste concept in packaging and really in an innovative way see how you can get that packaging material back into making new products and new resources for new use. It's done in many places, but we want to find new ways for the packaging that is relevant in our value chain. So that's all very nice, but we buy packaging material, so we're not the experts on packaging. And that's one of the things we need to deal with. So how do we do that practically? And what we did was that we joined forces. At the start it was 5, now it's 8 partners. And what you see, you can't see the details here maybe, but these are some of our biggest packaging material suppliers representing different packaging formats. So in fact, these are competitive companies. So it's can suppliers, it's glass suppliers, it's fiber suppliers, it's PET suppliers. But they've actually dared with us to come together in this circular community to say, okay, we have a bigger issue here. And we need to learn from each other how to deal with those issues, both in the beginning of the chain, in the innovation scale, all the way to the end of how you manage waste and consumer engagement, etc. And I think that's very cool, that they have we have all together left and said, okay, we know this is difficult, it's not going to be a comfortable journey together, but it's something that we know will benefit us all. So it started last year, and it's now making progress with different kinds of innovations and products underway to develop this partnership. So, as I referenced before on partnership, this is a good example of taking off the safety belt, but you're not in the car now, but taking off the safety belt and just live dangerously in a zone that you're not really used to work with different kinds of partners to think about what could be tomorrow. So really quite exciting. I have also created a lot of interest because it is so unusual to create those kinds of partnerships. But I think it's definitely the future for different areas. And one of the examples in this circular community to illustrate just how broadly it goes is that we've created a partnership with a very, very small company called EcoXpack, which is EcoXpack, sorry, who is a small innovator of bottles from wood fiber. So fiber bottles. It's crazy innovative, and it's not on the market today, but they have a very good base innovation. But they don't have the funds, they don't have the contacts, they don't have the means to scale up and do all the testing to actually get to the market. So we joined forces from Carlsberg with them, together with the Technical University in Denmark, to help with innovation know-how and research know-how, and a Danish innovation fund to create the opportunity for this little small innovative player to actually be able to possibly get a product on the market. So that's a long-term investment, but it's also, so they are also now part of this circular community. So it's really about business, but if you have established the business case, the leadership and the management of the company will also see that these more long-term projects will definitely have a return as well. So you get the business case to do the things that maybe have a return on investment beyond 3 years. So the circularity of your value chain is, I think it's a brilliant concept. I wasn't the inventor of it. It's all my sustainability colleagues at Carlsberg who has really been taking this concept of circular economy that we have heard by sustainability experts for quite a while, but making it into something practical in a business context. And I think it's all about rethinking the way we talk, rethinking the way we do things, and finding those connections point of talking the same language within the company. And the business cases for driving environment performance are usually really, really strong. I hope that was some food for thought and some new ideas. So thank you very much.